Greetings friends, today we're talking about armor and just how much better it's going to be in 10th edition, and I guess whether or not you need to start thinking about what armor you're going to be including in your list. Alright, let's get into it. So welcome back to the channel, I'm John, the Blood Angels Commander, and today we're talking about armor and its massive buffs that it's been had. I've talked a lot in this channel about how armor has a giant problem in 9th. It wasn't tough enough in most cases, it maybe lacked invulnerable saves, Dreadnoughts had -1 damage, and it just didn't get fielded. Maybe at the very end in Arcs of Omen we saw some Bile Predators and some Gladiator tanks, but that was about it. So GW have gone ahead and shared the data sheet for a Rhino, so let's take a look. Straight away, the most important thing I suppose is toughness went from 7 to 9. So that's huge. And they have said that they've increased Melta guns in terms of like their strength has gone from 8 to 9. But if you think about it, before Meltas would wound on 3s, a bunch of other stuff would probably wound on 4s or 3s. Most of the other stuff is now wounding on 5s. Meltas is only wounding on 4s. And then, I guess, other things that are interesting is a Rhino can do some melee. It's no longer only hitting on weapon skill 6, it's now hitting on weapon skill 4. It's going to self-repair. It's an old rule that they used to have for like, it was almost like funny how easy Rhinos were to repair, so they're going to be able to repair 1 wound per turn. There's a couple other rules we're going to cover today, which are Firing Decks and Deadly Demise, but we'll get them in a minute. This is the first time we've really seen like a standout on why they changed weapon profile. So in this case, because you only get 1 shot from your Hunter Killer Missile, they can make it hit on BS2. And the Hunter Killer Missile has gone up massively. So strength 14, and it's actually got an extra point of AP there. Notice there isn't a degraded stat line. They did say that vehicles simply suffer a penalty to their hit rolls once they're reduced to 1/3 of their starting wounds. So probably that means that they'll still move at full speed. And I guess that was a big problem with vehicles, is once they got low, they end up moving like just a few inches, and they could potentially become very useless. And then the other interesting thing about Rhino is note that it has objective control 2. And as we get deeper into this presentation, we'll see some vehicles with objective control 5. So vehicles can and will hold objectives over infantry now. They'll be much more difficult to wound as infantry. And I guess there's going to be a lot to talk about. We can see down here some things didn't change, like the Rhino is still a transport, it still has the ability to use smoke. So yeah, it seems like standard Rhino has got a lot better. Okay, let's talk about some of the new rules they talked about. They talked about Deadly Demise, which basically is when the model is going to explode, which still requires a roll of a 6. The Deadly Demise here in the core abilities basically shows the number of mortal wounds you're going to take. So Deadly Demise D3 on a Rhino. They don't specifically say how many inches the explosion is, so maybe they're going to standardize that. We'll see. But Firing Deck is the other interesting thing. So a Rhino has Firing Deck 2. This dictates basically how many models embarked can shoot their guns, and you can choose, you know, if you had a Devastator squad in there, you can choose which models are shooting out of the Firing Deck. Firing Deck 2 means 2 weapons can shoot out. We're going to get into some really interesting fire decks as we go through this as well. Right, I think the big thing to say is that they've basically said that they are going to consolidate a bunch of these rules that different factions had for like open top vehicles or whatever, try and make them more unified. This will help balance them, and I think a big thing that I see in 10th edition is that they're aiming to add more balance. So we know a lot of things have had buffs in toughness, and we know models embarked can fire. Any embarked models are also free to hop out after the transport has moved and shoot. There used to have to be a special rule that allowed you to do that, providing obviously the vehicle didn't advance or fall back. So you can do that too, and the vehicles now have higher OC. So lots and lots to digest there. I think what it means is vehicles are just going to be much more a core part of the meta, and you're probably going to want them simply for, if we talk about taking vehicles for ablative wounds in previous editions, well, ablative wounds just got a hell of a lot better, assuming their points to costs didn't change much. Like, for example, a Rhino just got a hell of a lot better. You know, like, if you've got plasma weaponry, like, you're not doing much damage to a Rhino now, maybe. And also, the giant reduction in AP across the board makes like vehicles with a 3-up armor save a lot more survivable as well. So the vehicles are almost getting like a double win here. They're going to be harder to wound, they're going to get a better armor save, they're going to control objectives and give units inside the ability to shoot out. It's just, armor is going to be so important, I think, in 10th edition, which is good because in some ways it's going to help move us away from like we're going to move into more balanced lists. And I think the game is more fun when you have more balanced lists as opposed to one list that just double down on one thing it does too well. And then, you know, like, for example, I suppose you could say that, like, Iron Hands and Arcs of Omen just shoot out the enemy with big units too well. You know, like, there's other things throughout this season, you know, that the flyers for AdMech, they were just too good, whatever. And they haven't really talked about flyers. When they do, we'll come back and cover it. Anyway, let's move on. Let's look at the actual firing deck. Some models have a firing deck X listed in their abilities. Obviously, that's the X number of models that can shoot. For each of those embarked models, you can select one range weaponry. So, I mean, in the case of Space Marines, you're probably going to want like something good like Stern Guard with multi-meltas and a Rhino, for example, and then your Rhino is going to get 4 multi-melta shots. They also said embarked troops previously who couldn't get buffs because they were in their transport itself now gain any boost the vehicle does. So they used a mechanic from Orc as an example, but this would mean a Tech Marine giving a vehicle +1 to hit. Would actually then buff all the models inside. So if you have a transport, maybe like an impulsor, and we don't know everything yet, but let's say if an impulsor could take some sort of heavy weapons, I guess maybe Devastators with multi-meltas inside an impulsor. The impulsor is open topped. You make the impulsor +1 to hit. Your whole Devastator squad is getting +1 to hit. And then your whole Devastator squad can move 10 inches because the impulsor... Actually, I think an impulsor moves 14 inches. Maybe it's 12. It's been a while since I run the impulsor. They didn't get much play. They were open topped, but you could shoot out of them. And I guess now this is what I was talking about. It's all going to be favourable in terms of balance. Like I said, in 9th edition, there was an imbalance here. Like if you looked at the Dakari vehicles, for example, they were all open top. You could shoot out of them, but Impulsor was open topped. You couldn't. So that's all going to be fixed, hopefully, by this firing deck rule. And obviously, I talked about Deadly Demise still requiring a roll of 6 to explode. So firing deck, for me, seems like a big improvement. Assuming that firing deck has been made to have sense, and it might also, they mentioned down here like an Orc battle wagon has a firing deck of 22, which sounds pretty crazy if you've got a mechanic that you can make it +1 to hit. But maybe they could now fix that. For example, if the firing deck of 22 on that Orc battle wagon is just way too strong, for example, they could just do like a hotfix, data slate, I guess, where they go, okay, you know, the firing deck 22 is too much, it's going to be firing deck 12, for example. That's something they couldn't do before because it was like, it's open topped, so everything could shoot, right? So even those Dakari bolts, where everybody was shooting out the bolts, maybe the Dakari bolts come out and they're still too strong. I mean, they were pretty strong for a while, but anyway, maybe they're too strong. They could basically go like, all right, the bolts are like firing deck 5, because obviously not every model is going to be able to get clean line of sight from the top of the bolts. It would make more sense if it was firing deck 5, for example. So I think we could see firing deck as a universal rule is just much better than what we've had up until now. If you are enjoying today's video, please always remember the Blood Angels Commander releases a new video every Friday, and we are also live every Wednesday night for battle reports, and every Saturday night for painting, and every Sunday night for Army List shows. We do a lot of stuff on this channel, so if you want to see more Blood Angels content, or you just want to support the channel, you could like or share, whatever you want to do. I appreciate it. If you don't want to do that, that's fine as well. There's no pressure. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching this far. All right, let's talk about Storm Speeders, Gladiators, Repulsors. They're the other 3 that they shared, and I've just thrown their profiles from the Warhammer community article up here so we can look at them. Storm Speeders, interestingly, look like big winners. The Storm Speeders are going to get +2 wounds, which is pretty decent, up to 11 wounds, and they're going to get 3 toughness, which makes them really fast. I mean, they were fast anyway, but really quite durable. I mean, Storm Speeders to me, I've got one, haven't fielded it that often. I felt like it really suffered from durability. This is going to help it loads, and obviously Objective Control 3 is not bad considering how much firepower these things have. Like, there's one that basically has like a 3-shot melta, 2 3 damage crack missiles, and then some other like Fragstorm stuff as well. So these things could rinse some armor, or even rinse some infantry, and then potentially just zip onto an objective with their OC3. And I guess if they're charging and they have weapon skill 4 up now, they might actually be quite good for Blood Angels. The Gladiator Valiant, not much change there, just +2 toughness. Again, OC3, very useful. I imagine all Gladiators will have that same profile. And then the Repulsor is OC5. And I think the interesting thing is they didn't share the firing deck rules yet for the Repulsor. But, I mean, technically there's 3 doors on the Repulsor, 2 on the sides and 1 on the back, right? Maybe if technically at least one model should be able to shoot out every door. They typically don't care if a gun's pointing backwards or forwards, they just let them shoot, right? So I would guess firing deck 3 maybe 4 for Repulsors. Repulsors look like they're going to be pretty cool. Unfortunately, the Repulsor kept its 3-up save, so it's not quite as durable as a Land Raider. I guess we'll see if the Land Raider manages to keep its 2-up save. I think the Land Raider is going to be so interesting. The Crusader, which is the one we used to run before, which used to rinse infantry, and the regular Land Raider may actually be very useful. And we're going to get on to why they're very useful in the next couple of slides. But with lower AP game-wide, which is what they said, obviously there's still Melta, which is -4. But Melta will be wounding a lot less reliably. But I guess if there is a lot less AP in the meta, then the Storm Speeder, the Gladiator, and the Repulsor all look like they are much more fieldable than they were. I'm going to guess some toughness of other models. I guess after we get the full release, we can come back and see how accurate it was. I think the Terrax, which was toughness 8, will move to about toughness 10. Actually, everything in this list was toughness 8. The Land Raider, I think, will stay similar to the Repulsor on 12. I think the super heavy tanks may go up to 14, and I think the Spartan, which is a cool model and obviously was in that Horus Heresy box that released last year that went plastic, I think it's going to be about T14 as well. So now might be the time to start looking at that Horus Heresy box, especially if you want more Terminators, because we know Terminators are going to be pretty good with their improved 4-up and fun save and toughness 5. I assume anything that they're doing to firstborn Terminators or the old Terminator kits are going to get done to both the Cataphractii and the Tartos, or the Relic Terminators as they call them. But I guess we'll see. I think it would make sense for them to do that, because I think that would sell more of the Horus Heresy boxes and people would be more inclined to play both 40k and Horus Heresy. So I think it can only be a good thing. But anyway, this is going to make armor, even in an army like Blood Angels, which typically don't want to run armor, you want to just run all melee. I think this suddenly means like you could be looking at a Repulsor and a Land Raider as a very viable list. And I've also heard a few rumours, and I don't know if I trust the rumours, and these didn't come from Chapter Master Valrek, because most of the rumours normally come from him. But I've heard a few rumours that the Repulsor is going to be... The rumour I heard was like it's popping off, which basically means the Repulsor is going to be some hot property in 10th edition. And let's be fair, ever since the Repulsor released, it was one of the first releases, I think in 8th. It's been garbage. It had like a hot minute where like it got a few games, and maybe the Executioner had a hot minute as well. But the Repulsor's been pretty garbage since it released. It was almost going to be like the coming of the new armor for the Primaris, and it just never happened. So maybe this is the time. Maybe we'll actually be wanting to finish painting Repulsors. Maybe for the next 6 months on this channel, I'm going to be painting Land Raiders and Repulsors. Maybe that's time. Anyway, that's where we stand. That's what's changing. Also, what's really interesting that they mentioned is a couple of things. A lot of the Primaris restrictions have been removed, or the regular Marines getting in Primaris vehicles have been removed, minus a couple of exceptions. Space Marine transports no longer care where a Primaris unit is riding in the back. They said the Rhino, the Razorback, and Impulsor are still specialised for certain squad types. I think that basically means no Terminators and Rhinos, no Gravis and Rhinos, or Razorbacks, or probably, yeah, it's probably that. No Centurions, Terminators, Gravis in Rhinos, Razorbacks, or Impulsors. But it does mean maybe some cool things like Blade Guard in Rhinos or Razorbacks. Razorbacks with double las cannon might actually become meta again, because they could transport 10 Blade Guard potentially, and they could basically be some anti-armor firepower, reasonably cheap, and be ablative wounds. I imagine if a Rhino's toughness 9, a Razorback's going to be toughness 9. I remember the old days of the Razorback meta, so we could see something like that again. They also mentioned that, and maybe this is why repulsors are so exciting, repulsors let endangered Space Marines dive inside when an enemy charge draws near. So maybe there's a strat that says if you're near the impulsor and you get charged, you can just move. You know, other armies have the ability to move out of charge range. Maybe Space Marines finally got it. And then they showed off what that repulsor can actually do. So the repulsor takes 12 now. Jump Pack, Woven, Gravis, or Terminators take 2, and Centurions take 3. So I guess if you wanted to put 4 Centurions in a repulsor, that's totally viable. They also said that Land Raiders reclaim their assault ramp, meaning passengers can declare a charge on the same turn they disembark. So basically your Land Raider, which will move forward 10 inches, assuming they don't change any of the movement and stuff like that, your Land Raider, which will move forward 10, will then basically allow a squad of Terminators, a squad of Aggressors, maybe like multiple squads of BGVs, and I think BGVs are going to be really interesting. I've been harking on about how good I think BGVs are going to be. I think I'm going to buy 3 more, so I have over 10 of them. You know, 2 5-man squads of BGVs, turn 1, Land Speeder moves forward 10 inches, super difficult for the enemy to bring down, right? Toughness 12, potentially a 2-up save, potentially 60 wounds. Turn 2, it moves forward another 10 inches, because even if it's only on 1 wound, it's not getting the degrading profile isn't stopping it moving, so it's moving forward 10 more inches. All your squads are disembarking within 3, which essentially means in turn 2, you've got all these guys pouring out your Land Raider 23 inches forward. If you think about most of the maps in 9th edition, and I don't think much will change with the maps, the deployment zones are about 24 inches apart. So you're in the enemy's deployment zones with everything that's embarked within the Land Raider, sorry. Don't run Land Raiders very often. Within the Land Raider in turn 2. So they've even called out that Terminators are going to be basically good. Often we talk about deep strike charges being super unreliable. If this is the case, then I would say, you know, F deep strike, get those Terminators into Land Raiders, and that's just going to be a huge win for Space Marines. Other armies are going to benefit from this too, of course they are. But right now we're talking about it from a Blood Angels point of view. If we want to get a bunch of non-jump units in, and let's face it, we're going to want jump units, we're still going to want that. We're going to want durable units as well. So, like, towards the end of the Arcs of Omen season, I was sort of the opinion that, like, you should have 2 or 3 durable units, and you should have 2 or 3 jump units. And I think my list that I ran to the tournament landed pretty much bang smack in the middle, right? I had 3 durable units, I had 3 jump units. And that was fine, but a lot of other people maybe went 4 and 2, and again, I think that was fine. I think the 4 and 2 actually is probably better for Blood Angels if you have 4 fast-moving units and 2 durable units. I think if you can do that, but also have 2 Land Raiders, or a Repulsor and a Land Raider doing OC5, you know, basically holding objectives, rinsing enemy armor, rinsing enemy infantry with whatever guns and stuff they have, and then ablative wounds for whatever needs to. All of our MSU jump units can also hide inside these Land Raiders if they ever get close, or in the case of the Repulsor, if they get charged, they can jump inside. Everything's going to change. And I think it's going to be cool. I think it's going to promote combined arms, and I'm going to talk about that in my conclusion to this video. So, I wanted to say, this is everything we wanted, right? We wanted armor to feel more meaningful. A lot of people like Blood Angels as a fast-moving army, and I like that. However, I don't feel like I should ever be penalized for, like, hey, I want, you know, I was going to say, I think I've got 5 Predator tanks. I think I've got 5 Predator tanks, I've got 2 Land Raiders, I've got a Repulsor, you know, I've got all these things that basically got no playtime through 8th and 9th edition. So, these things could have some play in the game now. I won't feel like an idiot for including them. I won't feel like I'm taking a hit to my competitive list for including them. I may actually get a benefit for including them. It may actually be like a Land Raider is a really useful thing to have. If you think about like Land Fortress for the Votann, I was at a GT where the Votann won and they had 2 Land Fortresses, and it was like, yeah, of course. I mean, Land Fortresses are super survivable. There's a There's a build in Votann that they can just make them very, very good, like mortal wounds every time they shoot, and basically have an invulnerable save. And then they can get repaired for 4 wounds per turn by the Votann Tech Marine or Tech Priest or whatever he's called. So, like, that's a totally viable build, and I think that if that's something you want to be able to run as Marines, it's going to be interesting to see. I think this is going to herald in the return of combined arms like never before. We don't know what Flyers are going to do yet. If Flyers get the same sort of bump of toughness, it could actually swing like the whole game into a really weird / interesting position. But I'm going to say you're going to be much more rewarded for building balanced lists as to building skew lists. And a skew list is one that just focuses on one aspect and goes really hard on it because the rules or the situation of the current meta make that list super powerful. And while that is fine, I don't necessarily think that's a good thing for the game. And I also don't think it's a good thing for competitive play, because it just means every time a new skew is figured out, then all the top players will just do it. All the people with big loads of different armies will just do it, and that will be what's winning tournaments. Whereas for me, I'm passionate about Blood Angels. I'm only going to play Blood Angels. I get 2 kids. I don't have time to do any other army right now. So I don't like the situation where, like, there's other things that are just totally skewed in the meta, and if you come up against them in a game, you know you're going to lose. And I think all the the generalization of all the rules, and also this, I'm really hopeful that this is going to be a huge step in the right direction. There's so much to discuss about 10th edition. We're covering it all on the channel. We're still covering some 9th edition stuff. We're still doing our Army List show on a Sunday night, so please come and hang out and say hi to us when we're live or whatever. But yeah, we are also diving deep into all this 10th edition stuff and trying to hit the ground running. So when 10th edition releases, we'll be building Army List day 1. We'll have some like guides up, hopefully day 1 as well. And you know, we'll be talking about it all live, or however you want to talk, however you want to look at it. Finally, thank you for getting to the end of the video. It means so much to me for you guys getting to the end of the video. It does help me out. It does help me out with the algorithm. And remember, for as little as £3 a month on Patreon or £4 a month by joining on YouTube, there's links right under this video description. You can support the channel and join in our members only Discord, where I try and chat with everybody who's a member and help if you ever have questions, even if you're a member or not, I'll try and help you out. Leave me a comment down below, but if you are a member, then I will make sure that any help I can give you, I will pass it out. I will catch you next time in the next video, guys. Thanks for reaching the end and watching to the end. I appreciate it. If there's any comments, you can leave them down below as always. By the blood are we made strong, and next week I think we're going to talk a bit about the psychic phase. There's been some releases about the psychic phase, and there's also going to be like a lot of stuff coming out now that we're past Warhammer Fest. So we'll cover it all. Like I said, we're going to be there day 1 in 10th edition, making strong Blood Angels lists, and we're going to be figuring it all out at the same time as you guys. Thanks again for watching. I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.